Isaiah chapter 12. In that day, you will say, I will give thanks to you, Yahweh, for though you were angry with me, your anger has turned, and you comfort me. Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid, for Yahweh is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Therefore with joy you will draw water out of the wells of salvation. In that day you will say, give thanks to Yahweh, call on his name, declare his doings among the peoples, proclaim that his name is exalted. Sing to Yahweh, for he has done excellent things. Let this be known in all the earth. Cry aloud and shout, you inhabitant of Zion, for the Holy One of Israel is great among you. That's it, short little chapter. And that happens to be one of the coolest little chapters in Isaiah, even though you might not realize it yet, but it's a song. It's like a song of praise or a song of worship. When we were going through the Psalms not that long ago, we went through and found there were 150 Psalms of praise. Some of them were Psalms of praise, some of them were Psalms of other things. And there was no Isaiah back then. But here we have doesn't call it a psalm, but that's pretty much what it is. It's a Psalm of Isaiah. Isn't that cool? And it started out by saying, in that day you will say, and then there comes the song. And what is that day? Why are we saying these things, and what day is it that we will say them in? Well, to get that, you've got to go back to the previous 2 chapters. One of the problems that we find as modern Christians when we read the book of Isaiah is that we tend to break it up into chapters and we don't connect it to the chapters before and the chapters after, so we don't realize there's a flow. Like, you wouldn't read any other book, like, a novel, and you wouldn't just open it up to some random chapter in the middle and just read that and say, well, I've read my chapter for the day. No, books are often in order, and but we, for some weird reason, often don't read books like Isaiah with that kind of thinking, but they flow. And so people like Isaiah the prophet, they had prophecies, like they sought the Lord, they got words from the Lord, but they ended up writing them all down and compiling them in a book. Now, part of the process of doing that is just thinking about what the Lord had to say and how best to write it out. Like if you had a great revelation of God, things God was saying and things God was doing, one option is, write it out. If God spoke to you word for word, yeah, sure, you might write it out like that. And that's the book of Leviticus is an example of that. It's almost word for word from God. But other times, it's things that people receive from the Lord, then they have to think, how can I communicate this? And so they word them, and that's why it's all poetry. It's like thought about. It's been worded in a way to get the message across. And so Isaiah, puts his thoughts down, what he thinks the Lord's saying, and he puts it in an order, and the thoughts flow from one to another in order. So it starts out in chapter 12 by saying, in that day. Well, what's that day? Well, that's what we found out in the previous chapter. It's in the day that the Messiah comes, and the rod of his mouth struck the nations, and the lamb will lie down with the leopard and all of that. It's in that day that the Messiah's kingdom is on the earth. Well, you might say, well, when is that day? I have to tell you, it's now. We're in that day now. Now, it's not some future, magical heaven moment on earth. We're in the kingdom of the Messiah now. Jesus is ruling on the throne now. The nations are being subdued by the rod of his mouth now. The rod of his mouth is the gospel. And the gospel is going out into the world. The words of God are judging the nations. Now, you might not think that because you're thinking in judgment more in terms of, getting a big slap around the head. But God's judgment, at times is a slap in the head, but other times it's just his word on the matter, and his gospel goes out, it goes into hearts, and they change. They've been judged. And nations change. And we're seeing that in the world, like 50 years ago, Uganda, completely heathen. Today, 90% Christian. The rod of his mouth struck Uganda. Changed. Super cool. So in that day, you will say the things that are in this psalm. Things like this. Give thanks to Yahweh, call on his name, declare what he has done among the people. Well, what has he done? He's saved us. He's changed us. He's at work in the nations. Look, Uganda, not the same place it was. God's doing things, and we will declare what he's done. This is a great, great song of praise. Look at this. Sing to Yahweh, that's to God. He has done excellent things. He has. Cry aloud and shout. The Holy One of Israel is great among you. He is. This is a psalm for now. And one of the lines in here was, he has become my strength and my song. That's something every Christian can say. He is my strength and he is my song. I commend to you Isaiah 12. It's a cool, cool little song. And when it so applies to now, and it's in that day, which is this day. And who knew we had that extra psalm in the Bible? Well, now you do. Lord, thank you for this Psalm of Isaiah. I ask, Lord, that we would find praise and joy in it. Lord, and our eyes would be open to see the wonders of God. Amen.